These are difficult days in Israel. As I'm speaking to you, the Israeli army is moving against Palestinian militants in Gaza. After a week of aerial bombardment, now there have been several days of ground operations, and many lives have been lost. Lives have been lost on both sides. This is a brutal, asymmetrical military conflict. When I say asymmetrical, I mean that on one side, you have the Hamas militants that are really more of a militia than an army. They are officially classified as a terror group, and they blend into the civilian population, often in ways using the civilian population as human shields. They are firing rockets that can travel about 25 miles, which means that several major cities and population centers in Israel are within their range. Each one of these rockets really does not carry so much explosive power, but is packed with thousands of small ball bearings, which means that any person caught in the open near one of these rockets is going to be maimed or severely injured or even killed. To fire one of these rockets, technically, is a crime against humanity. Firing one of these rockets at a population center is such a crime. On the other side, you have the Israeli army that is very technologically advanced, that has F-16 fighters and tanks and armored personnel carriers and lots of soldiers, highly trained, and is moving now into the Gaza Strip to confront these armed militants who are supporters of the Hamas movement. How do we understand God's solution to a conflict like this in light of the Scriptures? In his most famous sermon, Jesus spoke on the Sermon on the Mount directly to this point. And his answer is a radical one and challenges the very roots of our faith. He says that the laws of God say that we should fight against our enemies, but he, our King, would take those laws to a perfect level, a higher level. And he says, I say to you, love your enemies. How do we understand what it means to love our enemies in light of conflicts like this today, when there are militants who are committed to the destruction of our nation and the killing of our young people? How do we love enemies like that? Well, Jesus would say to us, look, it is faith in God. It is not in human strength. Our father Abraham obeyed God and took his son, the son that he loved, he took Isaac to the mountain of sacrifice, ready to kill him because he believed that God could even raise him from the dead. Such was his faith in God. And I believe in the kingdom of God, we are called to that kind of faith, faith that goes beyond the natural. With that kind of faith, God says, love your enemies and do good to those who persecute you. Do good to those. Pray for those who despitefully use you. Turn the other cheek. Go the second mile. Do not resist the evil one. Believe in God, and God will bring about his solution. He will bring about his kingdom. I believe that these words of Jesus have the power to change the hearts of men and women. Recently, I read the story of a young man from the Palestinian-controlled West Bank, a young man named Joseph Massab. He is the son of the highest Hamas leader on the West Bank, and he spent some time in an Israeli prison. During that time in prison, where he was serving a sentence for being a supporter and a leader in the youth Hamas movement, during that time in prison, he became disillusioned with the Hamas movement and deeply disillusioned with their ideology and their Islamic faith. Later, he met Christians in the city of Jerusalem who invited him to a Bible study, and as a result, he himself became a Christian. He said the verse that changed his life, that impacted his heart the most, was this verse from the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus said, love your enemies. And he realized that this was beyond the capability of his father's movement, Hamas, and it was something that he himself wanted to receive and knew he could only receive from God. I believe these words of Jesus are in fact the words of God to us. We must go beyond what is humanly possible. We must find in him the spirit and the power and the faith to love our enemies and to do good to those who despitefully use us. My son is serving as a soldier in the Israeli army. So when I look at the Palestinian people, and I look at the militants in Gaza, I look at people who want to kill my own son. Still, the words of the Lord are true. Love your enemies. And I must struggle with that, and I urge you to struggle with that too, and to come to a place of faith where God would show us how we can love our enemies and how we can change our world with this love.